Hello, Carrie.
Hi, Lindsay. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thank you for joining me. It's such a treat to have Carrie Nola here with us for this special interview. Carrie and I have been weaving our worlds kind of around and about each other's for quite some time now and had the pleasure of a sister chat just a few weeks ago that really illuminated for me how much we have in common and what a shared purpose and path we have in terms of serving healers and serving light workers and bringing our gifts forward in a way that maybe steps outside the boundaries of the traditional service model. So it's a real treat to have you here today and to invite the audience into this vibration in this new way that you hold space for people. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, and thank you. I felt the same way. It's always, just so refreshing to have those moments of connection with one another and finding other people that are doing the work in the similar vibration that we are. So I'm excited to co-create a conversation today that's going to serve me, I know, and hopefully those that get to listen.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you are what I lovingly refer to, like myself and so many others, a bridge walker. You have a very solid traditional service model and training in therapy, but you also have a very strong pull and foot in the etheric world and the spiritual world and the intuitive world. Tell us a little bit about the work that you do and how you came to be doing this unique new paradigm blend.
Sure. So I started out, just like you're saying, in a very traditional training to be a licensed psychotherapist. And I've been doing that work since I stepped out of graduate school about 10 years ago and launched my private practice and healing center here in Central Florida. And it's interesting because as a child, I never wondered what I would do when I grew up. As young as I can remember, and talking to my parents and aunts and uncles, they always said that as a little girl, I would talk about, I'm going to help people. And I didn't have the language for what that was going to look like. Maybe sometimes it was a teacher, but as soon as I understood what a counselor, a therapist was, I knew that that was the role that I wanted to step in. And I feel like it was the safest way to begin to lean into my gifts and my purpose and what I'm really here to do, because it gave me this container to help me have some boundaries to understand who I am and what I'm doing. And as I got more and more comfortable with that over time, I found that I allowed myself to surrender even more deeply and completely into like you're talking about, just this more alternative, complementary, holistic, so many ways that we describe it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our woo, our mystic,
Right.
our medicine woman, our shaman, all of this energy just began to break open in me. And that really happened after about 8 years ago. I had two deaths of people in my life 3 weeks apart. One was expected, and one was a quick and tragic passing, unexpected. And it just broke me so wide open. Had me questioning why this is happening, why people do things like this to other people. What is my role in surviving something like this and supporting others in it? And my work just began to move and change after that point, because I just couldn't do it the same anymore. And I feel like anything that has ever uh, taught me anything this significant has been a moment of crisis, a moment of pain, a moment of being broken wide open. I love Elizabeth Lesser's book, Broken Open. And um, yeah, so that was a real change. And the moment that I can pinpoint, and it's interesting, I just went back, this Mercury retrograde energy we're in, right? I went back through some old journals and came upon the some reflection I did after a healing experience after these two deaths. And my grandmother, who had passed, brought my other grandmother through in a meditation, and she said, forgive everybody in advance. They're sorry.
Oh,
Right? And I just, yes. And then my friend who was murdered, actually 3 weeks after my grandmother passed, came through in that same meditation, and she said, this isn't what it looks like, Carrie. Me and this person, this soul, had an agreement, and he followed through on that, and I am grateful.
wow.
And Oh, it's so moving to think about it because I had so much anger in my heart and so much hurt and lack of understanding. And I kept picturing the moments of her transition and pain. And she brought me this other possibility of, wait, maybe it's not what it looks like in physical form. Maybe it's this larger unfolding that when I came in physical form, I forgot.
Yeah.
And such a blessing to be reminded. And I feel like now my personal healing has really been about being curious about what is different than what it looks like. And
Nice.
yeah, and how we can look at the dark, what appears to be the dark energies and forces and behaviors, and see the love and the truth and the divinity in all of what I experience, rather than something happening to me, but how is that happening for me and as a part of my transformation and awakening.
Absolutely. First thing that comes to mind that you hold space for so beautifully is that combination of inquiry in the places where it's hard. I think more and more seekers are getting comfortable with staying in this space and allowing for the pause that it requires to be an inquiry for all the fun stuff. Which direction does my business want to go in? Show me. Where would you have me go next? Please show me. What would you have me do next? Please show me. But that same inquiry is so powerful when we use it as a guided system through the hard stuff and through the shadow stuff. And yet there's still this perception that to be a healer or a light worker, we have to be in this high vibration, which then also gets perceived to be contrary to shadow. And we end up with this culture of what I call chronic persistent positivity, where we're trying to sweep away anything that isn't beautiful and light. And ultimately, in my opinion, it sounds like this may be true for you as well, we're missing out on the opportunity of all that is trying to present itself and bring itself forward through the very natural balance of light and dark, of shadow and expansion. And I also know there's just plain a ton of fear around shadow. Even the word sounds like it must be something you don't want to have anything to do with. And
yes,
we know how potent it is. Tell me a little how you work with people to move into that space of first understanding it and second gleaning the blessings within.
Yeah, thank you. It's a beautiful reflection, and I do relate to all of that. I think we do, the fear leads us to denial. We want to pretend like that room isn't in our house. And I like to start with an invitation that you can keep a door closed in your home as long as you want, but that doesn't mean that there's not something in there. It doesn't mean that room doesn't exist. And I think we like to open the doors that feel positive, the doors of joy and of love. And yet those doors that hold our grief or our shame or our sadness or our fear, our anger, our jealousy, our rage, those doors and what's behind them knock louder and louder, whether that's through physical symptoms, illness, dis-ease, relationship struggles, fertility. I mean, you name it. It's like our body talks, our mind talks. And so I think those are the symptoms of keeping those doors closed. And when we open them, that opportunity exists. So I love to teach and share and reflect people back through metaphor that often Spirit gives me. I don't often go into a session or an experience with something in particular. I used to be so much more rehearsed and planned. And now it's like I just practice being terrified and showing up with nothing and with everything. It's like holding that contradiction, right? And I remember Brene Brown saying, we can only hold as much joy as we hold shame. And it's like a continuum and a pendulum, right? So as far as we swing into the pain, we can swing that far up into the joy. And to me, that's the reward. That's why I do what I do, to have a full experience. I don't want to have half of my experience. I want to have the whole thing. And opening the doors to my pain is what has done that. And inviting other people to do the same. I'm hearing similar feedback about their experience as well.
So what are some of the ways that you help people step into that?
One of the things I do most frequently, if anyone ever works with me, is something called parts work. And that is in a process of meeting the parts of us that are asking for our attention. And so let's say anger towards, your partner is coming up. And so we may meet the part of you that is feeling that anger and give that part voice. If that anger could talk, what does she want you to know? What is going on? Because what I find we do with parts of ourselves is we silence them. Anger's not allowed, or we let them drive the bus of our life. And an angry, 14-year-old, when we are grown individuals, it's okay, and we can forgive ourselves for those moments when that part of us drives. And our lives probably aren't going where we want them to move when that reality is taking place. So I figure out who's driving the bus, and we do that with this process of loving inquiry, like you mentioned. It's what does that part of you want you to hear? And are you willing to be a nurturing parent to that part of you, not by giving that part of you advice or telling that part not to be angry or, what you should be, or sharing this, crown chakra wisdom from the ethers. It's like, yeah, I hear you. I see you. You're pissed. You did not appreciate the way that person spoke to you. You're mad you didn't get your way. I get it. That sucks.
Yeah.
Let's be here in that. And then sometimes that's enough.
Right. The witness, just being right there to witness what is.
That's it. I hear you. I see you. And I feel like people are waiting for, and I know there were many times that I was waiting for some massive, tool or technique. And I think people are surprised, and I continue to be surprised that it's just enough to see it and to hear it and to allow it to be what it is. I don't need my anger to be something different. I can, and I love what you mentioned about the vibration, because I feel like we are so quick to tell ourselves, oh, you can't be angry because high vibration, people or healers don't get angry.
Right.
I get pissed. I get rageful. I don't like everything that happens. And when I bring compassionate witness, I can maintain a vibration that feels good to me and that feels safe, because I'm in my power, as long as I'm with every single piece of my experience and not picking and choosing which pieces of my experience I'm willing to bring compassion to.
Absolutely. And I always found it ironic that in those times when we can't face and process an emotion, we actually end up packing it along for the ride with us, ultimately spending that much more time in relationship to it than if we had met it when it showed up, let it say what it had to say, and allowed it to shift. So that thing between staying stuck versus, that the image I'm being shown is that fibrillating deer, the deer processing the fear and letting it shake out, but then going on about its day. Unlike the deer who doesn't process the fear, who might be out on that field living in fear of what might come next. Well, deer don't do that. They go about their day. They trust because they actually processed whatever fear they had when it was real and true in the moment.
Yes.
Not as easy for us to do.
It's not. We've got our ego mind, and it wants to protect us, and it wants to keep us safe. And emotions don't always feel safe. And again, that goes back to, I think that's another piece of my work, is there's such an avoidance in my experience, and I know I wanted to avoid it and still do sometimes, of our past. Yeah. Oh, that already happened, so I don't need to look at that. Yeah. And I see memes that say, when the past calls, send it to voicemail or don't answer. And it's like, well, you can do that, but that voicemail is still waiting for you. And whenever you're ready to listen, it will be there, but it will show up in your body. It will show up in your life. And it's okay. The beauty of our body is it'll wait for us. It'll expand. It'll yell louder, whatever it needs to do to get our attention. It's that loves us that much. It will do that. And so I believe in looking from a nurturing parent perspective back on the younger versions of ourselves and bringing them into the present moment, which is what the deers don't need to do, because they are able to experience it in the moment. But that's not always safe in our experience. We often have well-meaning caregivers who haven't processed their own stuff, and so we put that in our bags, and that goes into our inner house, and we grow up and begin to figure out how we separate what's mine and what's yours, and where do I start and you stop, and vice versa. And that's how we start to stand in our power and really own our vibration.
Oh, absolutely. You touched on something else which feels really important, which is why we sometimes feel like we can't show up how we're really feeling. Either our egoic mind says we shouldn't be there, or we feel like we have to keep it together for the people in our lives, or we our children or our families, but also for those who are working in the healing arts, for our clients.
Yeah.
And how do you help? I mean, you expressed that you clearly did this yourself because you had these two friends pass, and somehow you were still getting dressed and showing up for work and serving your clients. And that is a challenging road to walk, of how to be human, fallible, emotion, subject to life and all of its lessons, and still showing up in the world in the way that we want to. How do you do that, and how do you help others to navigate that potentially tricky journey?
Yeah, I'm still figuring this out every day. I still have that part of me that says, you have to have it together. You have to show up a certain way. People are expecting you to be something. And I'll never forget, I had a mentor while I was going through that grieving process, and I called and I said, the death of my friend was very public. In our community, and so my grief was public. I couldn't hide it. And I remember her saying, I said, what do I do with this with clients? Like, they're grieving her loss. It's a community loss. And what do I do? And she said, it would be a crime, Carrie, to not allow them to hold this with you.
Oh, yeah.
And it really touched, in my training as a traditional therapist, it's keep your stuff to yourself.
Right.
You're a blank slate. Don't bring your stuff into the room. Don't self-disclose. And this was like, I didn't know how to do that with this. And so I very, carefully navigated. And so the way that I do this is I hold dual attention for the parts of myself that are showing up in my experience while I hold space for my clients. And as I continue to build a deeper relationship with those parts of myself, I'm able to say internally, okay, I see that's waking something up in you. And this is an internal dialogue. I'm going to revisit this after the session. Can you hang tight? And, then I return back, and I might say, you lost me for one moment there.
Yeah.
I was being present with something in me, but I'm going to breathe here for a moment, and I can be with you again. And I just acknowledge, because our clients feel it. And, from working with children, I learned this. They're so beautiful and such teachers. They would come and they'd say, Carrie, you're sad today. And I would be like, I thought I was hiding that. Shoot, like they have me figured out. Adults are a little bit less likely to throw it out there. Some do, and at first I remember being like, oh no, I'm fine. And then I thought, wow, what did I do to that little one's intuition? Their read on my energy when I denied their correct and accurate sense. And I remember going back to that child and saying, last week, I wasn't able to tell you the truth about this, but I wanted to validate that. And yeah, it's very moving, because I think of what that did to my own intuition as a child, when I knew that there was anger in a room, when I knew that there was fear, and when there was pain, and when nobody was talking about it. And I think those are some of my greatest wounds of not trusting myself, because nobody validated that what I was feeling was true. And now I have to do that for myself.
Yes.
And that's the other piece of dual attention. How do I be with myself and with you? I just tell you the truth, whatever my truth is in any given moment. We're not talking about sadness right now, but I feel it in the space. Are you aware of that, or is that just mine? And we just put it out there. You have a smile on your face, but I'm feeling something else behind there. Are you willing to look and see if there's something deeper that's asking for us to hold it? And I just got more and more willing. And it's interesting, I get braver externally the braver I get internally. And that's why I value doing my own work, and why I will continue doing it, because I don't feel comfortable asking clients to do things I'm not willing to do myself, and not something I did 10 years ago in a therapy room, something that I do on a regular basis, internally with myself, hiring people that hold space for me, doing group work, individual work, creative work, movement, whatever it is. I feel, I feel right within me when I'm in relationship with myself, and that's what allows me to hold that dual attention with others, and knowing those days when I can't. Going, my parts are really all over the place, and I call my clients, and my body used to get sick to do that for me. And I started realizing that I don't need to be sick to tell you no. I can just say, I'm not in a place where I can hold this with you today. I realized we had an appointment, but our relationship is really important to me, and I want to be here when I'm here, and I can't do that right now. So
you're modeling so much in all of this, and I'm so grateful to have been able to go there on tape, and people will be activated to all these things you're describing. You're just in your storytelling, you're showing the permissions and the kindness and the compassion you grant to yourself, the way in which you invite others into dialogue with you on that, the validation of our true feelings and vibrations, especially for children, feels like, it just brought tears to my eyes. I think it is one of the most important things we can do with children is to actually acknowledge what they're picking up on, even if it's not pretty, even if it's not what you ideally want it to be, so that we aren't shutting this down in future generations. Perhaps they won't have to do the uncovering work that we did, should they be honored in that way.
Exactly.
Oh, so much goodness in this. I want to thank you so much, and I know that everyone listening is really being activated to a new way of thinking, whether that's, in your words, you've got a deep, clearly a commitment and a vibration to peacemaking, or that's what I would call it, in the way that you are speaking to yourself and others and holding space for yourself and others. And so I invite everyone who's watching to sink into what might feel different about Carrie's voice and her energy and her word choices, and just let that percolate in, let that act like an activation mechanism, because you'll find that it will begin to take root, and you'll find yourself being able to emulate that same thing. Well, I know we've gone a little long here, but in closing, I'd love to offer people who find their way to these interviews some guidance on one thing that they could do to start creating some shift in their lives that's excuse-proof. It doesn't have to do with where you live or how much money you have or how much time you have. It's something any of us could do to begin to bring ourselves forward in this way. Do you have any thoughts about what that one thing might be?
I do. I just pictured, this is going to maybe sound so silly, and when you said excuse proof, that's when it came. The next time you go to the bathroom, because I know one of the things we all have in common is that we will use the bathroom today. When you are there in the bathroom, take a breath and ask yourself what you need. What do you need? And it sounds so simple, and it has been the most, if I could only ask myself one more question my entire life, that's what it would be. What do you need? And not expecting somebody else to give that to me, because there are people that might be able to, but yet that teaches parts of me that I'm bringing them to somebody else to take care of. And I think that's one of our greatest wounds, is waiting for somebody else to do what is our responsibility, and taking care of the parts of us always belongs to us. Other people can witness it. People can be there while we learn how to do it. It's messy, but what do you need? And
it's a good one. It's a big
allow
one.
the answer to reveal. All while you pee. It takes like 2 seconds.
I love that. It's beautiful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Where is the best place for us to find you online? Where do you hang out online? We'll definitely be including your links below in your Q&A, but also, of course, on the blog. But tell us where people can come get on your list and spend more time in this great energy.
Absolutely. CarrieNola.com is my website, and from there you can link up with me on Twitter. I also have a Facebook group for healers where we have these kinds of conversations on a regular basis. And however you feel led to connect, I would love to meet you and to support you any way I can.
Oh, wonderful. And I do want to encourage everyone to keep an eye out for your retreats as well. Just reading the description of these retreats is healing. So I encourage you to take advantage of one of the upcoming retreats or get on the list for a future retreat. What a gift to give yourself to be in Carrie's space. So thank you again so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I look forward to talking more.
Yes.
Take care. Bye-bye.